Ron Craig here again, reporting that God is right where He says He is in His written word, the Bible. God has been active in His creation ever since He created it, and will be right up to the end of this age and beyond. Throughout the Bible, we find information about God's activities in creation, past, present, and future. And much of that information is in the form of prophecies of future events. And much of that is found in the book of Daniel, beginning with chapter 2, where we are today. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had had a dream, which greatly disturbed him. Part of his problem was that although the dream had distressed him, he could not remember any of the details of his dream. So he assembled the professional magicians of Babylon and asked them to tell him both the details of the dream and the interpretation of it. If those highly paid men really had the power they claimed to have, then they could do both. But they demanded that the king tell them the details of the dream, and then they would interpret the dream. But the king, considering them worthless, ordered their deaths, Daniel being among that group. Daniel and his friends, having prayed, God revealed to Daniel both the dream details and the interpretation. So the killing of those wise men stopped. Then Daniel was brought before the king, to whom Daniel explained it all. Daniel 2:31 through 45. In your vision, O king, you saw a huge image. And that great image, whose brightness was impressive, stood facing you. And the form of it was terrifying. That image's head was made of fine gold. Its breasts and arms were made of silver. Its belly and thighs were made of brass or bronze. Its legs were made of iron. Notice there were two of them. And its feet partly iron and partly clay. While watching, you saw a stone cut out without human hands, and that stone smote the image upon its feet, which were made of iron and clay, and broke them to pieces. Then all of the iron and clay and brass and silver and gold, representing people of all those kingdoms, were broken to pieces and became like chaff of summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them all away, so that no place was found for them. Then the stone which smote that image became a great mountain kingdom, which filled the entire earth. This is the dream you had, O king, and now I will tell you the interpretation. You, O king Nebuchadnezzar, are a king of kings. For the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And wherever people dwell, and the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the heaven, He has given all into your hands, and has made you ruler over them all. You and your kingdom are that head of gold. That was Babylon, which existed between 605 BC and about 539 BC, about 70 years, which covered Nebuchadnezzar, his son and grandson, and then Babylon fell to the next kingdom. And that next kingdom was Medo-Persia, the arms and chests of silver. That kingdom ran from about 539 BC to 331 BC, a little bit longer than Babylon. For Daniel said, and after you, Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar, will arise another kingdom inferior to yours. What Daniel meant by the inferiority of the second kingdom after the first one, the silver after the gold, was that in Babylon, the king's word was absolute. Nobody could question it. His will was an iron will, and it would be done. In Medo-Persia, they had a little bit different system because they had a rule that the king could make a decree, and that decree was steadfast, and it could not be changed even by the king himself. So the king did not have absolute rule in the same sense that the king of Babylon had. Therefore, his kingdom was a little bit inferior. And that next kingdom, after the Medes and the Persians, was Grecia, or Greece, symbolized by the belly and thighs of brass or bronze. It ran from about 331 BC to 168 BC when the next kingdom took over. If you will notice, the statue was made of different metals plus clay at the very bottom. And we all know that gold is more precious or valuable, more costly than the other metals. It's more costly than silver, which is more costly than brass or bronze, which is more costly than iron, and obviously much more valuable, each of these, than the clay. And Daniel said that this third kingdom was made of brass, will rule all the earth. And the Grecian kingdom did rule all the known earth in those days, and then fell to Rome, which was next. And the fourth kingdom, which you saw, which will be Rome, and Rome was the longest running kingdom of all these four, from about 168 BC to 476 BC officially. But Daniel saw Rome's influence affecting the whole earth all the way down to the end times, whenever Jesus will set up his kingdom to destroy the Antichrist and those 10 kings represented by the 10 toes, and then his kingdom will last forever and ever. The fourth kingdom, which you saw, will be strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things. As iron breaks up other metals, that fourth kingdom will break in pieces and bruise. And whereas you beheld the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the final form of that kingdom will be divided. That's what is represented by the iron and the clay and the feet and the toes. But there will be in it the strength of iron, forasmuch as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were made part of iron and part of clay, so that kingdom will be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas you saw iron mixed with miry clay, in the last days they will mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they will not cling one to another, even as iron does not mix with clay. Now the two legs in Rome represent the divisions of the Roman Empire in the east and west. And the 10 toes on the feet represent the kings of 10 different kingdoms that will exist in the last days of this age, which have not happened yet, which we're getting close to, obviously. And Jesus will set up his kingdom then. In the days of those kings, those final 10 kings of the Gentile kingdoms on this earth, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed. And the kingdom will not be given to the Gentiles, but it will break in pieces and consume all of those previous kingdoms and the people from those kingdoms, and it will stand forever. Forasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of a mountain without hands, that is, no human effort was put into it, that was all of God, and that it broke into pieces the iron, brass, clay, silver, and gold, the great God has made known to the king what will occur at the end of this evil age. The dream is certain, and the interpretation of it is sure. And notice that there was only one interpretation. Now, before these messages are over, before this subject is over, the end time studies that we'll be doing, we will talk about all of these kingdoms individually. We'll give more information about them. But this lesson is just an introduction to this Daniel chapter 2 showing of what God has prophesied and is going to accomplish right up from Babylon's day to the end of this age. So we see from this illustration, these visions that Nebuchadnezzar had, and later the vision that Daniel had about the four beasts, same history, the same kingdoms, but Daniel saw human history from the standpoint of God, which was each kingdom was an evil beast, a vicious beast, whereas Nebuchadnezzar saw history as an impressive human being in a statue form. We'll be studying all these things and going into more detail so that you can know exactly where God is, just as He says He is in His living Word, the Bible.